Welcome everybody. We are happy to be here with you. We are going to talk about a new mobile application. A new somewhat, because we released it originally under the Esri Labs brand in July 2017. And maybe some of you actually have been using it under Esri Labs. But the big announcement today is that now it's available in the stores. You can download it. It's included with your field users, so you can go to town and use it. Although you will need to know a little bit more about it before you can do that. So that's why we are here. My name is Ismael Chivite. I work as a product manager in Esri, and with me is Jonathan Hastorp.
Yes, I'm the product engineer for QuickCapture. I work out of the Melbourne R&D Centre over in Australia. We build apps like QuickCapture and Survey 123.
Excellent. So let's go into it. This is the agenda, general overview, kind of motivations to create this application and what it does, some use cases. Then we will give you a demo to show how you can create your own projects. And then we will deep dive into some details of the application that are important to understand. You can ask questions throughout the session. If things get too nasty, we will just not take questions anymore. QuickCapture is part of a larger effort in Esri to help you optimize field operations with the power of location. Specifically, QuickCapture sits in this area of data capture. How can we create the best possible user experience for people to capture georeference data in the field? You might be wondering, hey, we already have collector, we already have survey, do we need a third one? Well, actually, this project was born out of specific requirements from people like you that were saying, look, collector doesn't cut it, survey doesn't cut it. They are great tools, but in some very specific workflows, they simply don't cut it. We need something different. So for that, we created this application. You can think of it like a big button, fat button application. It's really the simplest experience possible to create georeference data. You have a bunch of buttons representing GIS features. You push in one of them, we create that feature using the location from your device. This simplicity makes it ideal for different scenarios. We typically classify them as at-speed data collection workflows and also rapid data collection workflows. And we will talk in more detail about what this means in just a few minutes. But before we go into theoretical discussions, I'm going to actually give you a quick demonstration of the app running in my mobile device, because it's easier to just see how it works. Here you can see in orange the QuickCapture logo. I downloaded it from the store. You could do it too. Even if you have not created a project, you can have a feel of how it works. You see at the bottom, it says, no account, try it. You see that, right? Yeah. So you can just click right there. And this opens a collection of sample projects that we put together just for you to try them out. So I will go through some of them. This one, for example, the road debris reporter. Pretend I'm traveling on a vehicle and I need to quickly capture the location of certain debris along the road. I see a road marker on the side, I simply go, tap on it. At that moment, the location of the device along with this feature is sent into ArcGIS. And that's pretty much it. And just to make sure that I tapped on the right button, you probably, if you listen carefully, vegetation. It reads out the label to you to make sure that, you typed or you tapped on the right button. Why is this important? Because with this application, we want you to capture data without paying too much attention to the device. We want you to be focused on what you are actually capturing. Yeah? This is another example. This is an urban search and rescue scenario. It's another example of rapid data collection. The first responders are not necessarily out there to capture georeference data. They are there to help people. But they have a lot of information that they need to communicate for the next wave of responders. So an application like this, where they can simply tap on a button and snap a photo of animal hazard.
Right.
Right? So that simplicity, that is important. You capture that observation, put the phone back in your pocket, and you keep doing your work. That's rapid data collection. You can see that the buttons are color-coded because that means something to the folks. And you can also use these groups to collapse and expand to make easy access to the buttons that really matter to you at that moment. One more project I want to demonstrate, we call it Love for Walks and Bikes. This is just a sample project we put together. Pretend you work in the city of Cilantro, doesn't matter, XYZ, and you want to map bike paths, sidewalks, and obstructions to bicyclists and pedestrians. You are traveling down the road, there is a bike path on the right, so you activate that button. In this case, we are not capturing a point observation, we are capturing a polyline observation. And now you see that there is a sidewalk on the right. Actually, I have the buttons reversed. We should actually change this, right? And then you can have even 3 or 4 polylines being captured at once. And while this is happening, I could actually go and tap on pedestrian crossing. That will capture a point of that type, or an issue. You are not an issue. Right? So you can see that each button has different properties, and we will learn how you can configure these buttons to do exactly what you are looking for. So that's a quick view at the mobile application. In this video, you can see an example of how this app is or can be used. This is a field test we did around Esri campus in Redlands. One person driving, one person focusing on capturing information.
Start sidewalk right. Pedestrian crossing.
Note that the sidewalk button is now active. As soon as the car starts moving, you will see that the polyline is going to be created, right? And now we are going to approach the intersection with Nevada Street. There is a pedestrian crossing right there.
Pedestrian crossing. Start sidewalk left.
Now there are sidewalks on both sides of the street, so we have 2 buttons active. You get the point? Yeah, very simple.
Sidewalk left.
Very simple concept. So this idea of rapid data collection, at-speed data collection applies to many different scenarios. Let's go and describe some of them. In transportation, for example, people, field crews, they spend a lot of their time actually traveling, often at highway speeds. They can use QuickCapture as they go to capture information about assets, quick asset inspections, pavement conditions, snow plows. When are you actually traveling versus when your snow plow is actually activated and working? You can use QuickCapture to indicate if it is up or down and create the polylines accordingly. This is an example configuration from Colorado DOT. They use QuickCapture to perform night road sign retroreflectivity inspections at highway speed. Here is another example where some companies, utilities in particular, are using QuickCapture from helicopters, often to document where work has been done or needs to be done. And the beauty here is, again, that you can configure this big button application for people to quickly capture the information that they need. In emergency response, that will be an example of rapid data collection. You may have heard of these windshield damage assessments. It's not like you are doing a damage assessment of the windshield, but you are doing the damage assessment behind the windshield of your car without stopping. So you need to identify things very quickly, capture photos, and move along. This is an example from a nonprofit in Canada. They put the mobile phone with QuickCapture in the handlebar of the bicycle. And you can see that in the helmet, they are wearing a high accuracy GPS receiver. They actually are very interested in capturing these bike trails with high accuracy, and QuickCapture connects directly to these GNSS receivers. They are even capturing the elevation, the 3D features of the bike trails. And of course, through different buttons, they attribute the information that they are capturing. What is the type of trail, the skill that is needed to go through it, etc. This is an example from King County. They started using QuickCapture last year in July, actually, as soon as we released in Esri Labs. and now they are transitioning to the general release that we are announcing today. In this case, they wanted the simplest possible user experience for these guys in the field to document where invasive species have been found. But they wanted something like big button, fat, no training, go at it and capture the data quick, right? So ease of use was really a key element here. Once they capture the information, they run different processes in ArcGIS Desktop to generate different polygons and areas to plan ahead other work that is often done with other Esri tools like Survey 123. Now, how do you create these projects? This is done through a web experience called ArcGIS QuickCapture Designer. The foundation of these QuickCapture projects are existing feature layers. In these feature layers, you create categories through the symbology. And those symbols are turned into buttons later on in the application. Jonathan is going to give us a demo from the beginning to the moment you load the project in the app.
Thanks, Ismail. So I'm going to take you through a simple workflow of creating a project using the web designer. So the example we're going to look at is this mountain bikes trail mapping scenario, where they're capturing the trails using polylines, and also when they're out and about, they also want to capture points of interest using points. So within my Pro document, I basically set up my data to ensure that when I do import the feature service and create my project, it's going to be as streamlined as possible. The more time you spend getting your data right, the less time you have to spend in Designer creating your project. So that's the key thing to appreciate. The starting point for every QuickCapture project is a feature service. Now, I've added in 3 layers. I've got the point layer for points of interest, and I've symbolized it on observation type. So bridge, issue, lookout, intersection. And then I have 2 polyline layers, both for trails, one for paved trails and the other one for non-paved trails. In this case, we've symbolized those layers both on the trail type of being advanced, intermediate, or beginner. Now, as Ismail mentioned, every symbol or type for a layer will be turned into a button when you import that feature service using the designer. But the designer will actually do a little bit more work for you. It will look at the symbology, so the color of the symbol, and that will use it to color the button. It will look at the shape, and it will shape the button, giving it square edges or round edges. Additionally, it will actually look at the information within the feature templates. So if I go into the properties, if you have configured default values for any of the fields within your feature templates, then the designer will look at that and use those as default values for your buttons as well. So there are a couple of important things to do to ensure that the layers work well with the designer. The first one is to make sure that you symbolize basically using unique values or single symbols. Unique values is better because you'll end up getting a button for each type that you've symbolized on. Additionally, you need to make sure that you do have at least one feature template created for each layer within your feature service. This pretty much happens by default, even if you create your feature service in Pro or even in ArcGIS Online. But if there's none for whatever reason, then you won't be able to import that particular layer. And then finally, you need to make sure that you have all the fields that you're going to require or want to populate when that button's pressed. If the field isn't in the feature service, then you're not going to be able to populate it when you press a button. So I'm not going to publish this service now, but this is what you would need to do, get your data into this state, publish it as a feature service, and then it's ready to go for import in the designer. So let's sign in. You do need to be a creator user type or above to create projects within the designer. But then once in there, you'll land on the My Projects page. So here you can see any existing projects that you've already created. You can go in and edit them, view results for any previously submitted data against a particular project, and you can go in and delete them as well. But we're going to create a new project. When this page loads, you can basically see all of the layers that either you own or have been shared with you. And these can actually come from within your organization or outside. And we're going to select, in this case, the bike trails UC feature layer or feature service. We're going to set up some basic metadata. You can give it a title, tags, and also a data recovery email. So we're going to cover this in a little bit more detail, but essentially in situations where the user is unable to upload their collected data for whatever reason, we've got a mechanism where they can actually send it as an email to the administrator or author of the project. By default, it will take the email of the signed-in user. And of course, you can specify the directory within your portal, ArcGIS Online or ArcGIS Enterprise, of where you actually want that project to be saved. Okay, so that'll go through, read all the information, and then create a preview. And this is a pretty light representation of what you'll see within the application. In fact, I could actually download this straight away and start collecting data against it. But the nice thing about the designer is we can actually make things a little bit more attractive, and we can configure the behavior of what happens when we press a button. So let's start with groups. Of course, with all of these buttons and groups, we can go in and rename them. So I'm just going to turn this into unpaved layers. And then for groups, we can also configure the number of columns that you have your buttons spread across. By default, we import it as 3. But if I push this up to 4, you can see that I've essentially squashed all the buttons in quite a small space. You are able to preview your project in a range of different device orientations. And ultimately, it means that you can build a project for a target device orientation. If you know your users are going to use a tablet, an iPhone, you can build your project so it looks good on a tablet. Likewise for a phone. So in this case, we're going to use, well, our target device is a phone, so I'm going to reduce the number of columns to 2. And I actually am not really that concerned with capturing bridge features, so I'm going to ignore that, and the same for a lookout. I'm going to delete that button as well. Next up, let's just do a little bit of work in terms of making the buttons look a bit more attractive. So first up, I'm going to actually apply some nice symbols. We've got one for the issue button and another one for intersection. Okay. Next, we're going to make it look a little bit more attractive. I'm going to change the size. I'm going to change the shape. I'm going to change the fill, make it a little bit more green, and then I'm also going to apply a border as well. And then just for consistency, I'm going to go in and select all of the line-related buttons. And again, we're going to round the edges and apply a border. So that's the aesthetics. You can do basically shift and select multiple buttons and apply appearance changes to all of them. Next up, we want to look at the values or the data that's captured when a user presses a button. So by default, you can see that we've pulled through all of the fields that were in the feature service or in the original source data. And it means that we can put values into all of them. We've already pulled through the observation type value. So for the issue button, we've already got an observation type of issue, and we've already got the observation type of intersection for the intersection button. That was read from the feature templates that we saw within ArcGIS Pro. But for the rest of them, we can put in either default values, any bit of text we want. We could put a default value of, say, 90 degrees as a direction or bearing, but it doesn't make sense. So within the designer, we've actually added in support for variables. So instead of having a fixed string, you can actually get a variable, which will mean that when the user captures, for example, direction, we're going to replace it with the direction coming from the device. Likewise, we can do the same for horizontal accuracy and altitude. And there are a number of variables. We're going to cover these in a little bit more detail. But ultimately, depending on what field you're looking at, you'll have a choice. So let's do the same thing for advanced, intermediate, and beginner. We'll update the data. We'll specify, in this case, a start time and an end time. We'll put in the username of the signed-in user, and we will keep the trail type attribute the same as advanced, intermediate, or beginner, depending on the button. Okay, so let's save this one and switch over to the mobile device. We'll go into Get Projects, and then we will download the project. And you can see we've got the project pretty much ready to go and start collecting data. I can collect I'll wait for a location, and we'll collect an intersection. Now this is great, working as designed, but I've remembered that actually I want them to be able to capture, or the users to be able to capture a picture when they capture either an issue or an intersection. So again, let's jump in to the designer, and in this case, we're going to data, and I want to be able to enable photos. As long as you have attachments enabled on your feature layer, then you can switch photos on. And you've got a couple of options. So in fact, what I'll do is I'll show you the difference between them. The first option is to have basically a manual mode of capturing photos. So when you press the button, the preview will appear. You can take your picture, all good. The second option is automatic. This basically means that as soon as you press the button, the picture's taken, no preview, but it might be good in situations where perhaps you've got your device mounted to a dashboard, you're traveling multiple miles per hour down the freeway, and you don't have much time to actually wait for a preview or mess around with the camera. So I'm going to save the update here, go back to the device, and you can see I've got a project update available. So anyone who's basically got the project downloaded will see the update. They can then download it and then get the latest version of the project. So this is the manual mode. So if I tap issue, you can see I get the camera preview. I can take a picture and capture. And then with the intersection, I tap the button, and the feature and picture are taken immediately. So you can still see the picture, the capture is taken there, but we just don't have any time to actually mess around with a preview. So let's go full circle and look at the data that we've collected. So if you go into the view results, what will happen is we'll load up a web map and we'll add in all the layers that you had within your project so you can actually preview the data. So once it's loaded up, we'll see the symbology of the original feature service and of course the attributes of the data that we've collected. So is that all uploaded and set? Just double check. I think we might have a few bit of connectivity issues. Okay. So you can see within the features, for some reason, again, the symbology may not be showing. But you can see that we've got the fields populated, we've got records in the database or within the feature service. You can see that the type's been populated. The direction hasn't been populated because you need to be moving in order to get a direction. Horizontal accuracies come through. We've got altitude of 0 because we've got a network location, but if you're using an external sensor, you would have a proper altitude, and then all of your attachments are viewable as well. So yeah, I'll pass you back over.
Excellent. Do you have any questions so far? Yes. Okay, if you make a mistake in the field, you can undo, and we will see that in a second. Great question. Yes? Disconnected mode. Actually, you don't have to do anything for this to work in disconnected mode. As soon as you download the project, you are good to go. Okay? As you will see in a second, you can actually switch or flip the view of the buttons into a map. That map is online only for the moment, but in an update very soon this year, we're going to let you configure the map offline. But you can actually use the app without a map, and it will work offline. Will it send the data automatically? We are going to talk about that one as well. But yes, you can configure it to do manual updates or manual sync or automatic sync.
For the feature services, can they be in server portal and online, or do they have to be in specific?
Great question. Can I use feature services from online and enterprise? Yes. The software is officially supported in 10.7.1 ArcGIS Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. Great question. If we update the project, can we force the update on the devices? Not at the moment. We actually show this message, which It's going to show every time you try to open the project, the field user is going to see a message. Oh, there is an update. You should. You can skip it, but you get it all the time. So not being automatic kind of guarantees that people will be up to date.
So I know this probably sounds like it defeats the purpose, but in the rare occasion that you need notes.
Yes. Can I push a button and maybe add a few comments, right? We are going to see this concept of user inputs in just a minute, which gets closer to what you are asking for, although not quite. But we need to think about how we evolve this so you can actually take notes the way you described it. Yes?
Voice
Annotations.
Voice.
Voice annotations. It's in our backlog. I would love to sit with you and discuss in what scenarios you want to capture audio. Yeah, we were thinking maybe like tap and hold, and then it actually records the audio, and then we send it. But it's not implemented yet. It's only in our imagination. It's the first step, though. One more question.
Does it capture who collected the data?
Of course, yes. It captures who collected the data. And we are going to see that in a second again. Maybe let's go through the slides a little bit more. Important things you should know. QuickCapture Designer. You can find it at quickcapture.arcgis.com. It's important to highlight because if you go into the app launcher, you won't find it. It's not there. And the reason is that it's right now in beta. Okay, we are adding more features into Designer, and it's only available in English. So we didn't feel like it was ready to be in the app launcher. You need to go quickcapture.arcgis.com and then use it. Even though this piece of authoring is in beta, the application is fully released, okay, for production environments. Device variables. You saw in Jonathan's demonstration that you can manipulate the look and feel of the buttons, but also the behavior. What data is going to be captured when you push the button? And device variables are important. They calculate values from your device, such as the speed, the direction of travel, the time of capture, the name of the person that is logged in the application. There are over 40 variables, and these variables are available depending on the field type and the geometry type. So, for example, if your field is of type date, you can capture the exact time at which a button is pushed. If your field is of type date and the geometry type is polyline, you can capture 2 timestamps: when the button is activated, when the button is deactivated. As you can imagine, these 2 options are not available for points. So this table kind of summarizes the device variables that are available to you.
Cool. So there are situations where you want to capture more high accuracy data. That bike trails example is a prime example. So typically, your standard internal location sensors in your phones will give you accuracies in the region of 5 to 10 meters, 30 feet. And if you need to get any better than that, then you need to have an external GNSS receiver. QuickCapture supports external receivers, so you can basically pair them up and then start getting access to their higher accuracy locations and also all the associated metadata. So the second reason is that maybe in your particular workflows, you do need access to all the different information that is available from external sensors. They basically return NMEA strings. Within those strings, there are lots of information that you can extract regarding the metadata. The nice thing about QuickCapture is that we've set up a number of variables, probably about 20 GNSS-related variables, that you can use to map the value coming from the sensor into the fields in your captured records. So things like the number of satellites, your P dot values, your H dot values, all of these can be captured along with your feature. So this is really for point features. At the moment, you can't capture all of these for line features. And the thing is because each line feature is made up of multiple vertices, and we don't yet capture the metadata for each vertices. But we'll definitely take requirements from you in regard to that. The other thing is that you may want to use an external sensor to change the frequency of your location updates. So external receivers can allow you to update the rate that you get new locations. Phones, your basic internal sensors typically give you a rate of 1 Hertz. So every second, you're going to get a new location. And you can see in the example, the blue one in the example, I think on your left. So that was a basic collection rate of 1 Hertz. You can see that there's large gaps between each vertices, and then you have the straight lines between them. If you're trying to capture something like a path or a bike trail, and you want to use this data to create maps, it's not going to look very attractive. So the other example, the orange line, we've pushed the Hertz up to 5, meaning that we get 5 new locations every second. And the result of it is you get lovely, smooth, flowing lines that you can basically just use to generate your pretty maps. Now, in terms of connecting QuickCapture to your external sensor, if you're using Android, iOS, and Windows, you can use Bluetooth to make that connection. You pair it, and then you can start pulling through all those locations. Windows gives you another couple of options. You can use USB, so you might have a USB receiver, or you can use network. So you basically add your laptop or machine and your sensor, GNS sensor, to the network, and they talk to each other over that connection. In terms of the vendors that we support, currently the release version, version 1 out in the stores at the moment, will support Bad Elf, EOS, and Leica. And then from the next release, version 1.1, which we're pushing out at the end of the month, we're adding support for Trimble, so the R1, R2, and R10, and then also the Garmin Glow receiver as well. So hopefully we got you all well covered, but definitely if you have requirements for other sensors, then please let us know.
A bit more on the application. In the first demonstration, we barely scratched the surface of the different possibilities that it has. So I'm going to touch on updating locations, undo, controlling the audio feedback, etc. Switching into the mobile phone, you have here the data capture dialog. At the top right corner, there is a small icon that indicates how many records you have in the device. If you tap on that guy, it's going to flip the view into a map. And in this map, you can see all the features that you captured. So if I tap on that one and select it, and I can actually see what I captured at that location. From here, you can navigate through the different elements, and if you like, you can delete them. Now, sometimes you want to actually delete things immediately after you push the button because you made a mistake. In that case, now I'm going to ask you that you look carefully at the bottom bar. The bottom bar is now orange, right? Because the horizontal accuracy inside this room is not good. But you'll see that it changes when I push a button.
Intersection.
It captures that element, and now I have a few seconds to actually delete that particular feature. So right now I have this configured for 6 seconds, but you can change that. You can make it 20 if you want. So let's do it again. Capture a feature.
Intersection.
Now I tap on the delete button and I can delete. That's kind of an undo. You can also tap on the feature
Intersection.
and then go to the left button. This brings them up. The feature is located where I am, but maybe I want to report something that is across the street. So I simply move the map and tap on update. If you don't like this particular feature, as an administrator or owner of the project, you can disable it. To force people to use the GPS always, no manual overrides. As I said, the map here is only going to show you the data that is in the device. I can see all the data that we captured throughout the session because I have auto send off. So if you go into settings in the application, you can see that we have the auto send policy. By default, when you install the app, it's set to on every 30 seconds. This means that every half a minute, if we are connected, we send the data. If we are offline, we wait. And when we gain connectivity, we send the data. At that point, the indicator in the top corner is actually going to count down. So that guy at the top, you see it's empty because it has sent the data already. So if I go there, it says, oh, There are no records on your device. So you need to make your calls and figure out what auto-send policy you want to implement for your projects. Sometimes you want people to have a chance to review. Sometimes you actually want immediate data coming in. It's up to you. Other important settings here, the sound. If you are not happy with text-to-speech, you can go with beep, or you can turn it off completely. This is the audio feedback when pushing the buttons. The other one is vibrate. Do you want to feel the mobile phone vibrating when you have actually pushed that button? And finally, I want to highlight at the very bottom the location provider. So, like Survey123 and Collector, QuickCapture can connect directly to external GNSS receivers. You get better locations, you also get metadata out of them. As part of the different properties that you can configure, you can set the antenna height of the device to capture 3D values. You can also configure alerts. So when you are working with an external GPS receiver, say, for whatever reason, the Bluetooth connection is not working properly, it disconnects. You can actually enable an alert, and this will tell you your GPS just disconnected. It will tell you with audio, right? So this is up to you. You can configure these things as you like. Or say if the GPS stops sending data, maybe you are going through a tunnel or something, it will actually tell you as well. Okay, let's talk about user input variables next.
Plug in there as well. Okay, so we did have a question earlier about can you put in comments. So the idea of QuickCapture is to make the workflow collection as simple as possible. But we do accept there are situations where you do need to input or allow the user of the application to input some information. Prime example is we've had some transport-related use cases where people wanted to put a cost code in and then a route ID, meaning that any captured features could be linked back to a cost center so they could do all their billing and also to a particular area of work or project. So I'm just going to show you a few ways that you can actually have input coming from the user. So there are basically three types. You have free text, meaning that the user can type in anything they like, but we can put restrictions. And we'll take a look at this one first. So free text, in this case, this is an example of a road debris collection project, and we want to be able to enter a cost center. So I'm just going to put my cost center as Esri. I should highlight that you can only set up one of these inputs per project. And this is the reason why we've told the user to basically put cost center, dash, and then their route ID. So that means that they can do a bit of post-processing afterwards, split them apart, and then they can do whatever they need for their internal processes. The issue with this is that I could put in a typo, an extra digit, and then it's pretty much broken for our post-processing. But assuming I've done it right, I click done, then I capture a feature, and then this value will be written to the field that we've specified using the user input variable. You can quickly preview and ensure and actually see the tag within the map view as well. So let's look at a slightly more sophisticated example of free text. In this case, what we've done is we've set up an input mask. So input masks, for any of you that have used Survey 123, is basically a constraint on the text. You can enforce it to be capital letters, numbers, text, whatever. They're pretty powerful, actually, in terms of really restricting what a user can enter. So in this case, I'll put in Esri once more, and then I'm going to start trying to type in some text. It won't let me, because I configured the mask to only allow numeric input. The other thing is I've put limits in terms of the length of it, so I can't overtype, put in additional or miss out values or text. We've really restricted what the user can enter. The other thing to note is if you open up this project, the input UI pops up straight away. And if I don't put in anything and click cancel, or basically I'm going to close the project. So what we've done here is we've made the user input required, meaning they have to put in a valid value, otherwise they can't start capturing data. The other thing is that each time you close the project, you're going to be re-prompted to enter the value. We basically don't want people to enter a value and then forget about it. You know, do 2, 3, 4 days worth of collection and realize they should have put a new value in. So each time they close the project, they're going to need to think about it. So we've got another couple of ways of restricting what the user enters. The next one is a numeric input. And this will be familiar to all of you desktop users as the format of a range domain. So you specify a minimum, maximum number, and the value just has to sit within that number or range so that you can actually submit it. So if I put in this particular range domain is 1,000 to 2,000. If I try and put in 5,000, I can't enter. If I put in 1,000, I'm able to click done, and then we can write that to our captured features. Similarly, we've also set up another format, which is to use a list or effectively a coded value domain. In this case, we've got a list of grape varieties. We want to record it. We're basically surveying different runs within a vineyard. They've all got different varieties, but we're capturing disease information. So I want to go in and select the variety that I'm working against, in this case, Pinot Noir. Click done, capture the feature, and then we're writing that information to every captured record. So the only thing is that this has to be done before capturing. And we've definitely had a number of questions or a number of enhancements where people want to capture the button, then have comments pop up so they can then enter their information. We'll definitely look at that.
Exclusivity groups. You saw before that you can configure your polyline and polygon buttons to capture multiple features at once. That makes sense. Pavement condition, guardrail on the right, guardrail on the left. I could be capturing the 3 of them as I move along. But in some cases, you don't want to do that. Like in this case, the trail is either paved or not paved. The trail is either beginner or is intermediate. So for that, you can create exclusivity groups, which define which buttons within a group are exclusive. When I say exclusivity group, I don't mean cosmetic group. Like you can see that the buttons are organized in different groups, right? In 3 groups in here. But these are groups just for the looks. The exclusivity group can work across the visual groups. So all these 6 trail buttons are configured as a single exclusivity group.
Okay, so we mentioned a little bit before about data recovery. So there might be situations where users of the project or the app are unable to submit data. Maybe someone's unshared the feature service, maybe you've got connectivity issues. You know, there are situations where this could happen. So what the user's able to do is they can either try again, that may not help. So the other option they have is to send the data via an email. So what that will do is it will create effectively a zip file containing a SQLite database, which is basically what we store all the local data in, photo attachments, and also text files describing the schema of all the layers within the project. As we mentioned before, the default email is defined in the project. So what will happen is the default email client will pop up, the attachment will be added, and then the send to email will be populated with that email. They can then send it. So the QCR file is basically a zip file. If you want to open it up, you can just change the extension to zip, and then you can open it up using something like DB Browser, some kind of database viewing application. The other thing that we've done is we've actually created an Unsupported Pro add-in, and this will allow you just to view and open the contents of these files directly. If you want to grab it, it's available on the QuickCapture early adopter site, and you can view the geometry, view the attributes, view all the error messages, and more importantly, use the inbuilt Pro tools such as Append to submit the data to the feature service.
From a licensing perspective, as we indicated at the beginning of the session, this mobile app is already included with field workers, creators, and GIS professionals. If you want to buy a license for editor user types, you can do that too. You can buy the licenses from the Esri store or your Esri representative. In terms of authoring, creators. You need a creator user to create one of these projects. From a scheduling perspective, we just released the first version of the app into the stores. We also have windows available, but version 1.0 is English only. In July 31st, we will be giving you an update that will support all the languages that are supported in ArcGIS. And then in October, we plan our biggest update for this year, 1.2, where we are going to make the web designer final, and we will bring some exciting enhancements as well in the mobile application. Documentation is available to you. You can access it through the web designer page. And we also have a GeoNet place. In this GeoNet place, we have a blog, we have tutorials, and we have a forum where you can actually ask questions, raise issues, raise ideas, enhancements, etc. So we actually invite you to participate in the GeoNet forum so we can take QuickCapture where we all collectively want it to be. We have a few extra minutes for questions. Yes? So say you are doing, the question is, I'm doing a pavement condition study. Can I do like severe damage, intermediate? I would create 3 buttons. One is green for low impact, orange, red. Each of these buttons will have an attribute. So when the point or the line is stored, it carries the attribute of the damage level.
And sorry, just while you escape, don't forget to complete the survey as well.
Yeah, if you have a chance, you can. This is your opportunity to get us fired. Yes. Related tables, we don't support them really because this is not for updating features, it's just for creating new lines, polys, points. Yeah?
How does the polygon feature, how does that capture on the device? I understand the line feature starts.
Yep. So the question is, how do you capture polygons? So the guys in Canada that are doing the bike trails, they are also capturing polygons. They are digitizing the parking lots. They just walk around.
So how does it know where to start and stop?
You do it. And when you stop it, we connect the first point with the last. Yes?
Can we do sort of derived geographic things that can do the planes, so automatically populate the flood, like council members, and things like that? Based on some of the
That's a great question. So you are looking for spatial inheritance kind of things where you create a point and based on that location, you want to get the zip code, the city already automatically populated. At this moment, we cannot do it. However, we are going to incorporate into QuickCapture webhooks. I'm not sure if you are familiar with webhooks. We use them in survey. And webhooks are very useful to do exactly that. A webhook allows you to set an action after a record is added into the database. It's like a database trigger if you wish. And in that database trigger, you can incorporate logic that does a spatial query and updates the attributes of the feature that you just created. So we are looking at webhooks before the end of the year. Yes? Video input has come up several times. We still need to put more thought into it. We are just afraid of performance, reliability. We need to do a lot of work before we can capture video on QuickCapture. The question is if you can rename a project once created. Yes. In fact, you don't even need Designer to do that. You can go straight into the project item in online and rename it. These projects that we are creating with Designer are items. It's a ArcGIS QuickCapture item, type. So just like any other type, you can share it, rename it, etc. Yes. So there is a question about how much space I need in my phone to run this. By far, what consumes more space in your phone is not the data you capture. It's actually the base maps. So when you are working with offline base maps, you are talking often gigabytes. Imagine how many photos you need to take to just get on par with your base maps. So really, the data you are capturing shouldn't really be an issue.
But if you are concerned, you can control the size of the images that you capture. It's not something
there is a setting, that's true, that controls the size of the images that get sent. But it doesn't control the size of the images on your device. Like in an iPhone, I take a photo, 7 megabytes. That's what it is. But when we send it to ArcGIS, you can control and say, no, hold on, I don't want 7 megabytes. I want this reduced. It's a setting in the project that you can control for images. Barcode readers. We don't have barcode reading, but we can sit down and figure out how this could be useful to you. We would love to do that if you have some time. We will continue taking questions. We will be here for 10, 15 minutes. Thank you very much for your attendance, and please don't forget doing your survey. Thank you.